Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, you had a wonderful weekend, or probably at least I hope you, if you got hit by that nor'easter, hope you are faring well and didn't get you too bad. So let's go ahead and get started here. Mark sent us in a disclosure from Edward Jones, and we used to have this in the 21-point checklist, and I think it's still worth mentioning. You can see here that in the Edward Jones statement, it says down here, for the year ended December 31st, 2020, Edward Jones received revenue sharing payments of approximately $247 or $248 million from mutual fund and 529 partners, $4.7 million from annuity partners. And the same period, the total revenue of JFC and its affiliates was $10.2 billion. So what's the problem with getting kickbacks? What's the problem with getting kickbacks? How does that affect? Okay, I get bias. What do you mean by bias? You're right. Yeah. So isn't it? I mean, I have not been a financial advisor for 22 years, but so from in the 1990s all the way to the 2000 when I stepped out of the personal advising. Anytime I ran into Edward Jones, what did 100% of the clients? What kind of mutual funds did 100% of the clients have? Yes, American funds. And lo and behold, look at how much money they get from American. So things changed in the past 2 decades. Why does Edward Jones still recommend American funds? Hey, and I'm not saying American funds are bad. They're good. But how many mutual funds are there out there? Like 10,000 mutual funds. So does it just happen to be with 10,000 mutual funds out there that American funds are the only or are the best mutual funds for 100% of their money, their clients' monies? No. So is this something? And again, if you get your hands on really any of the broker dealers out there, they're going to have, many of them have this kind of relationship, especially entities like Edward D. Jones. So this is stuff that people should know. This is right off of Market Watch. Near-term pullback. Then the third bubble in 100 years is coming, says strategist. Here's how to get ready. So he looked at this. The S&P 500 PE ratio on a smooth operating earning per share ratio, which is smooths out the day-to-day PE or year-to-year PE. There have been only 2 prior periods of S&P 500 bubbles, 1928 to 29, 1999 2000, and neither ended well. How long did it take for the market to recover from the 28-29? How long did it take to recover? How long did it take to recover from 1999 to 2000? How about from 1999 to the 2000 crash? How long did it take? 20 years, right? So right here, you see we're right at the bubble level. But on both of these, did it go past the bubble? Did it go past this dotted line? Yes. So could we see additional increase in the market before it crashes? Absolutely. And we've been saying that forever and ever and ever. But the interesting thing, there's an analogy that I use. What's the analogy I use about the market right now? What's the analogy I use about the market right now? To tell you when the market's going to go. There's a shed and back with a bunch of 30-year-old newspapers with a can of gasoline there. Does that say that that shed's going to go up in fire? No, it says that any tiny spark will send that fire. Let's see what these couple of experts say. So this is a different one. This is a different article. Opinion: in his final warning, this stock trading wizard, who made big money in bear markets and crashes, called this market a bubble like no other. So this is actually a different person saying this. Veteran trader Mark D. Cook, who passed away recently, closely monitored the market's health and was convinced the U.S. stocks were due for a major hit. Mark D. Cook, a veteran options trader who was featured in Jack Schwager's best-selling Stock Market Wizards book, passed away on October 1st. I had planned to speak to him to discuss his bearish views in the U.S. market, which grew more ominous each week in his twice-shared column. Twice-shared weekly market column. Cook was an old-school S&P 500 futures trader. He made his first $1 million in the wake of the 1987 stock market crash by loading up on put options before the downturn. Thanks to the strength of the signal, from the New York Stock Exchange tick indicator he closely followed. Cook had other big trading successes, including a 563% audited annual return in 1992, followed by 322% annual return in 1993. Cook also was known for participating in 2001 and 2008 U.S. stock market crashes and made a small fortune betting on those. So this guy was a one-timer calling the right, because there's hundreds of guys who have called the market right once. How many times did this guy call it? Once or repeatedly? And over just like a one-time deal, over decades, he was right. Over decades. Now, this is a funny thing. I've been using that newspaper shed in the back with the gasoline can for the last 3 years. But look what he says. He says, think of a vacant building that has a gas leak. The gas has been leaking for a long time. The longer the gas leaks, the bigger the explosion. It'll take a catalyst to trigger an explosion, but no one knows what that trigger point is. The longer the gas is in there and ignored and forgotten, the greater the explosion. The stock market is like a vacant building. When it blows, the result will be horrible. He expected the worst to hit this market. So again, guys, getting out early, we've talked about this over and over and over, getting out 2 years early, 1 year early, getting out early, does that hurt your clients at all, or do they end up ahead of the game? And is the stock market in this first month, has it blown off all the steam and is ready to go again? Or is it warning that it's pretty darn wobbly at this point over the last month? Yeah. Doesn't mean it's not going to smooth out and start going back up again. But guys, is it sending warnings? I mean, every indicator on the dashboard is what? Every indicator on the stock market dashboard is what? In the red. I mean, every single one is in the red. So just make sure your clients are aware and prepared. So let's talk today's main topic is the next chapter in the Principles of Ray Dalio. So we're continuing to go through that book chapter by chapter. So today's chapter is about get and stay in sync. Recognize that conflicts are essential for great relationships. So should we expect our clients at the beginning to not trust us? Our prospects, should we expect them to not trust us? Should we expect them to look at, why should they not trust us? Should they believe a word that comes out of our mouth? No, why? Why should they not believe a word that comes out of our mouth? See, that's the problem a lot of advisors think. They think that if they have a fancy office, if they have credentials behind their name and they wear a fancy suit, that the clients are going to believe them because they're professionals and they're experts. Is that the way that boomers and any generation after boomers look at us? No. Why? Why don't they believe anything we say? I don't care how many credentials you have. What's the guy's angle? Why? What do you mean by what's the guy's angle? Anything that comes out of my mouth is going to be viewed as what? The only reason I'm saying it is what? To help them? The only reason I'm saying this is to help you. The only reason I'm saying that you're making these mistakes, the only reason I'm saying that you could do something better is why? Because anything that I recommend, I get paid on. I get paid on. So guess what? If I get paid on something, if you know somebody's getting paid on their recommendations, do you trust them or not trust them? Do you double check, triple check, or do you just go with their word? And it's amazing how many advisors tell me how when they buy a car, when they buy a TV, when they buy anything, how thorough their research is. But then they expect the clients to what? Just believe the first thing that comes out of the mouth. It is not the case. I know they're going to fight me. It's like a football player. So if a football player is running down the field and he just gets smeared, tackled by 2 or 3 guys, what's he do? Does he get mad at those guys? Does he get mad at those guys? No, what's he do? Gets up, goes back to the huddle, right? Now, let's take the same football player, and he's walking down, with his family, walking down shopping down the mall, and 2 guys come and they just nail him, smear him. Now what's he going to do? What's he going to do? He's going to react well or not well. Yeah, he's going to get mad. So what's the difference? He expects it on the field. Does he expect it out in public? No. So here's the point I'm trying to make. Should we expect them to disagree with us? Should we expect the prospect to be adversarial when they first come in? Yes, we should. And how do we turn somebody who's adversarial into the greatest of friends? What skills got them? That's right, you got them. You get on their side, especially the empowering. So we agree, we pair it, and we empower. That's how we get them on our side. So do I ever worry about the classic Zig Ziglar, and this is still taught. It's ridiculous. It's still taught. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, the classic rapport where we're like, hey, you fish, I fish. Oh, we're good buddies now. Hey, you went to the University of Minnesota, I went to the university. We're good buddies now. What happens when you try to do that kind of rapport? Does that help you, do nothing, or hurt you? It hurts you because immediately you recognize as what? Oh, this guy's just trying to sell me something. So I develop rapport by saying not that. And here's another example I use. So let's say that there's two guys. One drives a 10-year-old pickup. He wears Carhartt work clothes because he's a tradesperson, and he smokes Marlboros. And then there's another guy who drives a Tesla, wears fancy suits, and is a C-level executive at a local company. How much do they have in common? How much rapport do they have? How much rapport? Zero. But now put them in the waiting room to a doctor, and they both have prostate cancer. Now how much rapport do they have? What happens immediately? The rapport goes instantly, is instantly built because they're both experiencing the same thing. So guess why empowering is so powerful? Because it's saying, listen, I think just like you. My concerns are just like yours. In fact, the thing that you're worried about, I'm even more worried about it than you are. Yeah, it shows empathy. That's what builds rapport. So we use GOTS to build rapport, not that fake stuff. Make sense? So recognize the conflicts are essential for great relationships. My best clients were the ones that started out liking me a lot up front, or who were really super suspicious up front. And I've had so many guys tell me this exact same thing over the last 20 years. My best clients, my most loyal clients, the ones that refer the most, are they the ones that liked me from the get-go, or the ones that were the most suspicious to begin with, the most adversarial to begin with? Which one do you think? It's the ones that were most suspicious. That's who became my best, most loyal clients. Because people come in and happy and whatever, guess who they're happy with? Everybody. And you're in danger. Those people hop from person to person to person because they trust everybody. But here's also what I found. People who have the most money, are they the ones that love everybody, or are they the ones that are most suspicious? The people with the most money, are they the ones that love everybody or the most suspicious when they come to your office? Yeah, they're the ones that are most suspicious. So this is a great thing to pay attention to because it determines if your principles are aligned. And that's what Ray Dalio is saying. Recognize that conflicts are essential for great relationships because it determines if your principles are aligned. That means he's talking about for business partners. He's talking about for your spouse. He's talking about for your children. Hey, conflicts with your business partner, children, spouse, it's great because it sees if your principles are aligned. But we're talking about building our business. How do we show people that our principles are aligned? Not our business partner or spouse or child, but how do we show prospects that our principles are aligned? How do we do that? GOTS again. Yes, GOTS. That's how we do it. I think just like you. Your concerns are my concerns. In fact, I'm more concerned about those things than you are. So know how to get in sync and disagree well. Do we ever disagree with a client? Has a client ever said anything that is inaccurate? This is a trick question. Has a client ever said anything that's inaccurate? I've never seen a client say anything. Because based on their experiences, based on their viewpoint, if you got into their shoes, would what they're saying be accurate? If you looked at the world the way they looked at it? Yes. So what we need to do is to get into their shoes, tell them that the way they're looking at things is 100% accurate, and then we have to ask them questions so they get a clearer picture of how the world really works. Not how the world works in their minds, but how the world works in reality. So we have to ask those questions. If you tell somebody that the way the world works in their mind is wrong, are they going to ever? Can you ever convince them? Are you going to ever convince a anti-vaxxer that the vax is good? Are you going to ever convince a person who truly believes in the vaccination that vaccinations are bad? Either side. Are you going to? If that's the way they look at the world, are you ever going to be convinced either side that no? The only way you're going to do it is have them ask open-ended questions and let that person come to their own conclusion. Because if you try to push them, they're going to what? Push back. So if you try to tell somebody they have something wrong with their portfolio, something wrong with their finances, they're going to push back. We cannot do that. We have to get awesome at GOTS. And how do you get awesome at GOTS? Now here's Ray Dalio telling you, you got to do this, you got to do that. Does he give you any tools to do it? No. We give you the tools to do this. So 15-minute drill, yes, every single day. Why do I still do the 15-minute drill even after 27 years of me using GOTS skills? Why do I still do it today? Why do NFL MVPs still throw passes every day? If all you do is play in games, which is essential, if all we do is have meetings, or football players, all they do is play in games, what happens to the overall skills? Because how many times will you tackle a tackle dummy in practice? Over the entire week, how many times are you going to hit that tackle dummy? As compared to how many you're going to hit somebody in the game? Hundreds as compared to a couple dozen in the game. Same thing with passes, etc. So you got to practice on those skills, not in the game, but outside the game. Next principle: distinguish between idle complaints and complaints meant to lead to improvement. So we need to make sure we understand when somebody's saying something. Are they saying it because they actually mean it, or it's just a space filler? How do we do that? How do we help distinguish whether clients' complaints are idle or they're in reality, that they're looking to lead to improvement? We use motivational interviewing. We ask open-ended questions. If the complaint is idle and you ask them to explain with open-ended questions, how long before they get stumped? How long before if you ask them the who, what, where, why, when, and how, yeah, very quickly they're going to get stumped. That's the importance of open-ended questions. So remember, though, every story has two sides to it. Therefore, that's why we can't try to convince them that our side is the reality and their side is only in their mind. We have to ask open-ended questions so they come to their own conclusion. And if all we do is they say, this reality is my way, and you say, morality, no, my reality is my way, what's going to happen? You have to be able to get in the client's shoes. That's the importance of empowering. Because with empowering, what are we telling them? With empowering, what are we telling a client? That we understand how they feel? Is that what we're saying? With empowering, are we saying we understand how you feel? Ah, that's right, Nick. We're not saying we understand how you feel. We're saying the way you feel is absolutely 110% correct. Because when you tell somebody, I understand how you feel, what do they hear? When you say, oh, I understand how you feel, what do they hear? What word do they know is coming when you say that? I understand how you feel. What word do they know is coming? Yeah, but. So when you say that, that does not create rapport. That actually raises the defense levels even higher. You have to get into their shoes and say, you're absolutely right. Let me explain why you're right. You're right for this reason. You're right for that reason. If somebody says they hate annuities, what do I tell them? When somebody says, I hate annuities, what do I tell them? You hate them. I hate them worse than you do. You don't have to deal with them every day. I have to deal with annuity companies every single day. Why would anybody in their right mind want to give a company a bunch of money that when they die, that money just goes away? Why would I want to give a company money that they spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a year advertising how great if the investment was that good, guess what? They wouldn't even advertise it. I mean, all they're thinking about is themselves. They're not thinking about their clients. So yeah, when you say you hate annuities, yeah, why don't you multiply that by 10? Because you don't have to deal with it every single day. I have to deal with these things. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying when you hate annuities. I do too. Now, do they know at that point that I'm on their side? That I think like they do? Now, I did mention a few things. First of all, do annuity companies take all your money when you die? But is that one of the reasons people don't like annuities? They're convinced that that's how it works. Because who's telling them that? Basically like Fisher Investments, right? Yeah. And that's that. I mean, how many people annuitize their annuities, guys? What percentage? Yeah, about 1%. So that's 99% of the time that's wrong. But is that what they're saying? So what I'm saying is, if I had an investment where the company took all your money at your death, yeah, I wouldn't invest. So am I being disingenuous when I tell them those things? When I start to tick off all the reasons why they hate annuities, am I being disingenuous, or I'm saying no? If I had an investment that did those things, I wouldn't invest in it either. And heck, I think all of you guys can agree with me. Are you guys always happy with insurance companies and annuity companies, or you have to deal with them every single day? So how often are you frustrated with annuity companies? Often or never? So if you tell them, heck, you don't like annuities, I hate them. I have to deal with them every single day. Are you being honest or not honest when you say that stuff? But you deal with, even though you're honest, why do you still deal with annuity companies? Because can you find any other investment that does what that company's investment does? No. So even though you have all these negative aspects to annuity companies, in the end, if you could get that same product somewhere else, you'd do it. But is there anywhere else you can get it? And that's essentially what we tell the client, right? Listen, so I understand when we first started this discussion an hour ago. After you do the FIA presentation, when do you tell them it's an annuity? With an FIA presentation, when do you tell them and have them? I'm sorry, when do you have them tell you it's an annuity? When? At the beginning or at the end of that hour? When do you tell them? Boy, you all have to go back to look at that presentation. It's at the very end we tell them that it's an annuity, or they tell us it's an annuity. So if they tell me that they hate annuities, I'm going to absolutely get on their side, tell them why I hate annuities, go through the FIA presentation, and then when they say they want it, what do I tell them at the end when they tell me they want it? And Jeff, do we have plenty of tapes where this has happened, where at the end, at the beginning, they said they didn't want it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And what do they end up saying at the end?
No, well, that thing that you just explained, they want it, and then you have to tell them, yeah. Well, you can't have it.
What do you mean I can't have it?
It's an annuity.
That's not how I thought annuities worked. I mean, how many tapes do we have that?
A lot.
A lot. So guys, that's the power of understanding there's two sides to every story and getting on their side about the way they believe in things. Be open-minded and assertive at the same time. Learn how to struggle and fail well. So are we open-minded when a client, for example, here's an example. When a client says, you ask them, what's a power of attorney for? And they say it's for when you die. Are they right when they say that? What's the power of attorney for? It's for when you die. Is that right? No, that's not right. So do we correct them there and get them? First of all, we can't let them think that. That's wrong. But do we correct them? No. So what we say is what? Yeah, I mean, we go to so when I say, what's the power of attorney for? And they say, it's for when you die. I say, yes. I mean, it's one of those documents we go to an attorney for. For estate planning, we go to for a will and a trust. We just talked about the will and trust. And so when we die, what documents do we need? We just talked about them. Well, the will and trust. Yeah. So we go for the will and trust. We get that taken care of. And then we get other documents like medical power of attorney and power of attorney. So those, when we get those, they're not for when we die. It's for when we can't make decisions. And then what do we use? Oh, that's when we use the power of attorney. So did I tell them they're wrong? No. I just agreed with them and said, hey, you know what? Yeah, it's one of those legal documents. You're absolutely right. It's one of those legal documents that the attorney for totally got on their side, and then I asked them little questions, laid little breadcrumbs. So who told me the right answer in the end? I told them the right answer, or who told me the right answer? They told me the right answer. So you can't just walk away. You have to be assertive and get them to say the right thing, but you have to let them say the right thing. Don't tell them how it is. Let them tell you. Does that make sense? Distinguish between open and closed-minded people. This is another aspect of that principle. Should you be working with closed-minded people? What's Dalio tell you? Walk away from closed-minded people. Will you? I heard there was a quote that you are your 6 best friends. You are your 6 best friends. So if you hang out with a bunch of closed-minded people, what are you likely to be? The same. So distinguish between open and closed-minded people. Do you want to be around closed-minded people or open-minded people? Are you going to grow your business if you're around closed-minded people? No. Don't deal with closed-minded people. Now, with clients, how can we tell if somebody's closed-minded? Do we ever have to deal with closed-minded people? What percentage of people, of prospects, do I close? If I was in business today, what percentage of people would I close? 100%. Why? Of those I want, exactly. Why? Because I'm going to ask them. I'll take somebody who's closed-minded, ask them open-ended questions. We showed an actual video of a guy that was this about a year ago, walking around a park, and he was asking people about what they thought about voting rights, and the guy was adamant that, and went on and on about you need a picture ID in order to vote. And all this guy did was ask open-ended questions. And do anybody remember that video? How long did it take that guy to convince that guy who was adamant that you need an ID to vote? How long did it take for him, by asking open-ended questions, for him to say that there would be exceptions to that? Within a minute or two, exactly right. So when you ask, now if he tried to preach to the guy, how would that have worked? If he tried to convince the guy that that was wrong, yeah, it would not have worked. But asking open-ended questions, it's easy to turn somebody who's closed-minded into open-minded. Watch out for people who think it's embarrassing not to know. Most of our clients are embarrassed if they don't know, so we have to watch out. So like I just did there with the power of attorney, do we ever let them that they know that they don't know? Do we ever let them know that we know they don't know? No. We fall on the sword. We let them always be the smart person in the room just by asking open-ended questions. Now, how about ourselves? Should we be open to comments and questions of others? We have to be open to comments and questions of others. So if somebody questions us, if a client questions us or a prospect questions us, should we get defensive, or should we say that question is absolutely on point? That if we were in their shoes, we would have asked the same question. We want them to comment. We want them to question what we're doing. Then I know what's going on in their mind. Making suggestions and questions are not the same as criticizing, so don't treat them as they are. Be open to questioning. Be open to criticizing. When Jeff and I do a tape review, is that what we're doing with you? Is we're criticizing you when we do a tape review for you? No, what are we doing? We're finding ways for you to improve your skills so the next time you get in front of somebody like that, you're going to close that person. Worry more about substance than style. Now, in the past 20 years, I've had people leave 5Q because they did not like my style. I used to be a lot more combative than I am now. And there's people who choose not to work with me. They'd rather work with Jeff because when they coach, because Jeff is a much more reasonable person than I am, much more diplomatic than I am. I'm a much more blunt Bobby Knight type of coach, where I would throw the chair across the But when those people leave because of my style, would they also leave? Now, Missy and Jerry and Jeff ganged up on me about 10 years ago and told me I had to be a nicer person, and I try to be a nicer person now. But the fact is, guys, if somebody is combative, if a client is combative with you, if they have a combative style, and some of the biggest clients I ever got were combative, should that affect my desire to bring them on board or not? No. Like I said, the most combative clients end up being my most loyal clients by letting them feel like they're driving the bus. Be reasonable and expect others to be reasonable. But now this is the case. With combative clients, do I allow them to walk all over me? No. So if all of you would do this for me, so take your two fingers, your two pointer fingers, and touch them. Now push harder with your right one, and what happens to your left one? Push harder with your right one, what happens to the left one? Now push harder with your left one. If you push hard with one, it makes the other one what? Give. We don't want that. So I don't want to be overbearing and push a client, neither will I allow them to push me. So what you want is equal pressure so that nobody gives. Because if a bully, if you allow a bully to walk all over you, what's going to happen? Is anything going to get done? Is he going to move their money if they're going to move their money to you? And even if they did move their money to you, what's that relationship going to be like? Good or bad? Bad. Now, on the other hand, if you have a bully and you just completely squash them, will that bully work with you? No, because then they'll run, they're embarrassed, and then run for the hills. So what you want to do is apply the same exact pressure that they apply. So if I have a super nice person, guess what I'm going to be? Super nice. If I have somebody who's very direct, what am I going to be? Very direct. I'm not going to be doing a lot of fluff in there. If they want something, if they're going to be direct with me, I'm going to be direct back with them. See, people want somebody who, if I have a bully, guess what I'm going to be? I'm going to be a bully back just to the same degree that they are. Somebody wants to deal with what? Who do people want to deal with? People just like what? Themselves. So be reasonable, but you got to expect others to be reasonable. If people apply pressure to you, you apply the exact same direct pressure back to them. Am I speaking Greek, or do you get what I'm saying there? Does anybody not get what I'm saying there? Okay. So if it is your meeting to run, manage the conversation. Do we do this? Yeah, you want to mirror people. So if it is your meeting to run, manage the conversation. It's probably 2 or 3 years ago, I played a tape of it, and it's in our 15-minute drill tapes on the website. I had a guy who did a perfect 21-point checklist. It went perfectly. And then at the end, he said, do you have any other questions? And the guy asked a question out of the blue, and guess what happened to that whole meeting? Because when the guy asked the questions out of the blue, the guy muffed it. And guess what happened to that client? Bye-bye. Because the advisor ended up getting defensive. So have we given you the tools to run and manage the conversation with the 21-point checklist script, with the FIA presentation, with the sale presentation? And if you start going off the cuff, what's going to happen? Start going off the cuff, what's going to happen? Yeah, the meeting could go off the rails. So if it's your meeting to run, and the sale meeting, the FIA meeting, the 21-point checklist meeting is yours to run, so you need to manage the conversation, and we give you all the tools by asking those open-ended questions. When you have alignment, cherish it. Here's another thing. When somebody answers a question, I ask an open-ended question, and they answer it perfectly, or if somebody even beats me to the point at a meeting, what do? I empower them. Very good, Dale. I empower them. I tell them they are above average. They are boy, I've asked that question to probably 15 people in the last month, and only 2 of them got it right. You moved to the head of the class. I don't know if you've got training in this. I don't know if you just have intuition, but wow, that's all. The only second person out of 15 I've recently asked that to that got that right. So kudos to you. See, I'm cherishing the fact that they made the point that I wanted them to make for me. If you find you can't reconcile a major differences, especially in values, consider whether the relationship is worth preserving. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to walk away. So even though I could close 100% of people because I have them sell themselves, are some people very, very difficult? I have to ask them 15 questions to get them, where most clients I'd ask 2 or 3 questions. If I have to ask them 15 questions to get there, guess what I'm thinking? A client I want or don't want at that point. I mean, if I'm desperate, I'll take them. But if I'm closing, if I could close 100% of people, am I desperate? No. I'm just like, man, I just do not need to deal with the mental energy it takes to get this guy every single time. So you need to know when to walk away. And when I walk away, what do I do? Do I keep their folder? Do I put them in my maybe file? What do? I send them a note saying, hey, I think I'm not the right person. I think it's time for you to move on to somebody else. If you ever change your mind, come on back. But right now, you're not a good match. I don't try to chase them. So that's the Ray Dalio for this time. Are you guys okay with me continuing to dive into the Dalio's principal books chapter by chapter every couple of months? Awesome. And is it okay if I tie it to what we're doing here at 5Q? So you can see what he's saying is congruent with what we're asking you to do. Awesome. Well, thanks for being on today. You guys have a fantastic, hopefully warm rest of the day, and we will talk to you all next Monday. Thanks, everybody.